virtual public hearing for the Virginia Beach Planning Commission. My name is Dee Oliver, and I'm the chair. I call this public hearing to order. Today's public hearing is being conducted electronically in accordance with the Virginia Code Section 2.2-370.8.2A3, Virginia Code Section 15.2-1413, and the city's continuity of government ordinance adopted on March 31st, 2020, and the Chapter 854 of the 2019 Acts of Assembly as amended with me, the chair of the Virginia Beach Planning Commission, having called this special meeting for today's public hearing. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be posted within 10 days of the Planning Commission website. Mr. Steve Barnes, due to a family illness, and Ms. Robin Klein, due to personal reasons, are not in attendance today. I have asked staff to describe the order of business of today's meeting. Mr. Landfair?
Thank you, Ms. Oliver. To ensure this live electronic public hearing is successful, please note the following meeting order of agenda and instructions will be followed. The order of business will be as follows. Withdrawal and deferred agenda items. First is the consideration of requests to withdraw or defer an item. If you signed up to speak, you will be called upon following the applicant's request to withdraw or defer the item. However, please speak only to the matter of the withdrawal or the deferral and not to the merits of the item. Consent agenda items. Next is the consent agenda. These are items that the Planning Commission looks upon favorably, and there are no speakers signed up to comment. Consent items will be voted upon as a block and will not be brought up again for further consideration by the Planning Commission. Regular agenda items. Last are the regular agenda items. These items will proceed in the following manner. A. Statements by the applicant or applicant's representative, followed by questions from the Planning Commission by raising their virtual hand. C. Statements by any registered speakers, followed by questions from the Planning Commission by raising their virtual hand. D. Rebuttal by the applicant or applicant's representative, followed by questions from the Planning Commission, if desired, by raising their virtual hand. F. Deliberation of the application by the Planning Commission by raising their virtual hand. And G. Voting on the application by a verbal vote when recognized by staff. It is important that the Planning Commissioners hold their comments until recognized and to pause for 3 seconds after being recognized in order for staff to unmute you. Also, it is helpful for Commissioners to ask all questions at once and end by stating you will stand by for responses. This helps to ensure that all of your questions are answered before moving on to the next Planning Commissioner. During Planning Commission's deliberation, there will be no further public comment unless a question is asked by the Commission. Staff will attempt to facilitate real-time citizen participation and comments in the public hearing for those citizens who have registered. Planning Commission policy provides 10 minutes for the applicant to present the request, and all other speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. If you are the representative of a group, you are allowed 10 minutes to speak. Staff will be timing presentations. Please be advised that staff will mute you when your time expires. Madam Chair and Planning Commissioners, there are 2 speakers registered for today's public hearing during the regular agenda for item number 10. Those who have registered with staff to speak on the agenda item will be called in the order in which they registered. Speakers will have up to 3 minutes to make their comments, or 10 minutes if representing a group. If the speaker does not respond, or if a technical issue occurs which renders the comments unintelligible, the next registered speaker will be called upon. Following each speaker's comments, the Planning Commission will be asked if there are any questions of the speaker, and if so, please indicate yes by raising your virtual hand. Speakers, please mute any additional devices you have in the room to avoid any unnecessary background noise and/or the possibility of echoing and reverberation. Please note that once your name is called, you should wait 3 seconds to ensure the Planning Commission hears your complete remarks. Please begin your comments by identifying yourself. Also, do not ask, "Can you hear me?" as only one feed is open at a time to minimize the echo reverberation, and as such, you will be unable to hear a response. Once public comment is complete, the floor will be open for Planning Commission discussion and ultimate vote. At the conclusion of the public hearing, the chair will adjourn the public hearing. Please note that the actions taken by the Commission today are in the form of a recommendation to the Virginia Beach City Council. The final decision to approve or disapprove an application will be made by the City Council. The Commission thanks you for your attendance, and we hope that the experience here today leaves you feeling that you have been heard and treated fairly. Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission, are there any questions about the process, or does the Planning Director have additional comments? If so, please raise your virtual hand to be recognized. Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Redmond. Planning Commissioner Redmond, your mic is open for comment. Please pause for 3 seconds before speaking. Thank you.
Sorry, that thing needs an auto off function.
Thank you, Bill. Just for clarification for the public, during this pandemic, we've had issues trying to assure that we get a continue operations with the Planning Commission. And these items that are on this agenda were the items that were scheduled for the April Planning Commission meeting. Those items were picked up and moved to this agenda. We're doing our best to maintain what we've already put out to the public and to continue to do that in an orderly fashion. Thank you.
Seeing no more hands raised, we will move on to the agenda. The withdrawal agenda, item 16. Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission, the next order of business is the request to withdraw an application. There is one agenda item, item 16, requesting withdrawal, the application of Mark and Kelly Hansen. We have one speaker registered for this item, the applicant, Mrs. Kelly Hansen. Mrs. Hansen, please make your request to withdraw after pausing for 3 seconds.
My name is Kelly Hansen, and I'm requesting a withdrawal of my STR.
Thank you. Madam Chair, staff opens the mic to any planning commissioner with comments or questions regarding this withdrawal. At this time, please raise your virtual hand to ask a question or make a comment. I will now give the floor to the chair to request a motion.
Do I have any discussion, and may I have a motion if not?
Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Weiner as a motion. Please pause for 3 seconds before making your motion verbally.
Yes, Madam Chair, I move withdrawal of item number 16.
Madam Chair, staff opens the mic to you to call for a second.
Do I have a second?
Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Alcaraz as a potential second. Commissioner Alcaraz, your mic is now open.
I'll second that motion. Thank you.
Hearing a second, a motion to withdraw the application of Mark and Kelly Hansen has been made by Commissioner Weiner and seconded by Commissioner Alcaraz. Are there any planning commissioners abstaining on this item to be withdrawn? At this time, please raise your virtual hand for staff to recognize you so that you may provide an explanation for your abstention. The vote is now open, and staff will call each commissioner individually. If you are in favor of the motion, say yes. If you are opposed, say no. Please remember to pause for 3 seconds after your name is called before speaking. Mr. Alcaraz.
Yes.
Mr. Costin. Mr. Costin, Mr. Graham,
Yes.
Mr. Horsley,
Yes.
Mr. Inman, Mr. Inman,
Yes.
Ms. Oliver, Mr. Redmond,
Yes.
Mr. Wall,
Yes.
Mr. Weiner,
Yes. Yes.
Marshall Coleman will announce the vote result.
By a recorded vote of 8 for and 0 against, item 16 has been withdrawn. Bill?
Thank you. Next is the deferral agenda. The next order of business are items to be deferred. There is one item requesting a deferral, agenda item number 5, application of Thalia Road Partners LLC, a conditional rezoning request from B2 Community Business District to conditional B4 Mixed Use District for the properties at 4216 and 4220 Virginia Beach Boulevard, Lynn Haven District. The applicant's representative, Mr. Bruce Berlin, has signed up to speak. Mr. Berlin, the floor is now yours. Please pause for 3 seconds before speaking.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Bruce Berlin, and I'm one of the managing partners of Venture Realty Group and also one of the managers of Thalia Road Partners LLC. As many of you know, we were first scheduled to be heard on this matter in December of 2019. We've taken a series of deferrals since this time to address the concerns expressed by the community, and now, of course, we have been delayed as a result of the state of emergency. While we are eager to be heard, we have received requests and suggestions from city leadership to take another deferral in the light of the virtual nature of today's hearing. We understand that the limitations inherent in today's virtual meeting could potentially limit a fuller discussion of our application, and we are respectful of this concern. We are therefore amiable to another deferral. In the meantime, we reiterate our willingness to share information and discuss our plan. Thank you.
Ms. Oliver, you have the floor to open it up for Planning Commission discussion and a motion.
I will open the floor for discussion or a motion by the Planning Commission. Please raise your virtual hand if you have a comment or a motion, and staff will recognize you.
Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Redmond. Your mic is open for comment. Please pause for 3 seconds.
I move that the item be deferred.
Thank you. Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Weiner.
I second.
Thank you. Hearing a second, a motion to defer the application of Thalia Road Partners LLC has been made by Commissioner Redmond and seconded by Commissioner Weiner. Are there any planning commissioners abstaining on this item to be deferred? At this time, please raise your virtual hand for staff to recognize you so that you may provide an explanation for your abstention. The vote is now open, and staff will call each commissioner individually. I'm sorry. Director
Before-
Tahan.
Yes, before Mr. Landfair does the roll call, please note that this is a deferral to a date certain to June 24th, which is advertised as a public meeting a public hearing that will be held in person here in City Council chambers.
Thank you. The vote is now open, and staff will call each commissioner individually. If you are in favor of the motion, say yes. If you are opposed, say no. Please remember to pause for 3 seconds after your name is called before speaking. Mr. Alcaraz.
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Costin.
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Graham.
Yes.
Mr. Horsley. Mr. Inman.
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Oliver.
Yes.
Mr. Redmond. Mr. Redmond. Yes. Marshall Coleman will announce the vote result.
By a recorded vote of 8-4 and 0 against, item 5 has been deferred for June 24th. The next order of business is the consent agenda. These are applications that are recommended for approval by staff and the Planning Commission concurred, and there are no speakers signed up in opposition. Based on this morning's discussion, the following applications will be placed on the consent agenda. Items number 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 17, 18, 22, and 23. Thank you. Bill?
Madam Chair, the first consent agenda items are items 1 and 2. Spence Crossing Properties LLC for conditional rezoning request from B4 Mixed Use District to conditional PD H2 Plan Unit Development with A36 Apartment District Overlay, and a modification of proffers for the property located at the southwest corner of Princess Anne Road and South Independence Boulevard in the Centerville District. Before we turn to the applicant's representative, Mr. Nicholas Baum, I would like to answer the question raised earlier today by Commissioner Wall. In response to your question concerning bullet number 5, found on page 2 of the staff report, there is a typo in referencing the units. It should read 192 three-story garden flats and 32 two-story quad units. I apologize for that typo. We will now turn to Mr. Nicholas Baum. Mr. Baum, when you speak, please first identify yourself for the record and indicate whether you support staff's recommendation. Mr. Baum, the floor is yours. Please pause 3 seconds before speaking so that we can unmute your microphone. Thank you.
This is Nick Baum, representing Dragus Management Corporation. I support staff's recommendation.
Thank you. The next item on consent is item number 3, Melissa and Paul Venable, a request for an alteration to the existing nonconformity to expand the second story of an existing duplex at 213 and 215A 69th Street in the Lynn Haven District. The applicant's representative is Ms. Melissa Venable. Ms. Venable, when you begin speaking, please first identify yourself for the record and indicate whether you found the conditions acceptable. Ms. Venable, the floor is yours. Please pause 3 seconds before speaking so that we can unmute your microphone. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. This is Melissa Venable, representing Self. I support the staff's recommendations.
Thank you. The next item on consent is item number 4, Linda M. Addison for a conditional use permit request to operate a home-based wildlife rehabilitation facility at 1717 Dancers Court in the Centerville District. The applicant is Ms. Linda Addison. Ms. Addison, when you begin speaking, please first identify yourself for the record and indicate whether you found the conditions acceptable. Ms. Addison, the floor is yours. Please pause 3 seconds before speaking so that we can unmute your microphone. Thank you.
Is Linda Addison, and I do find all the recommendations acceptable.
Thank you. The next items on the consent agenda are items number 6, 7, 8, and 9. Item 6 is an ordinance to adopt and incorporate into the Virginia Beach Comprehensive Plan the Virginia Beach Sea Level Rise Adaptation Strategy, and to amend sections 1.1, 1.2, 2.2, and 2.3. Item 7 is an ordinance to conform sections 1.2, 5.1, and 5.16 of the Site Plan Ordinance, Appendix C, to the provisions of the Public Works Design Standards Manual. Item 8 is an ordinance to conform sections 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, 5.4, 5.5, 5.6, 5.7, 5.10, 6.1, and 6.3 of the subdivision regulations, Appendix B, to the provisions of the Public Works Design Standards Manual. Item 9 is an ordinance to conform sections 246 and 1501 of the City Zoning Ordinance and section 6.2.6 of the Ocean Resort District Form-Based Code, Appendix C, to the provisions of the Public Works Design Standards Manual. Both staff and the Planning Commission recommend approval of these ordinance amendments, and since there is no opposition to these requests, the Planning Commission places them on the consent agenda. The next items on the consent agenda are for short-term rentals. The Planning Commission places the following applications for a conditional use permit for short-term rental on the consent agenda. These applications meet the applicable requirements for Section 241.2 of the zoning ordinance. Staff supports the applications, and there are no speakers signed up to comment. Therefore, items 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 17, 18, 22, and 23 have been placed on the consent agenda. Madam Chair, that concludes the consent agenda. Are there any questions from the Planning Commission? Thank you, Madam Chair. Staff does not see any further questions of the Commission, so I open the mic for you to call for a motion.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Inman. Please pause for 3 seconds before making your motion verbally.
I move for approval of the consent agenda items. I also want to disclose my membership of the Virginia Beach Advisory Board of Town Bank, and I have a letter on file as to my status as a member of that advisory board. We do not approve loans, make those sort of decisions. And under the conflicts requirements, I am able to vote and will vote.
Thank you. Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Weiner as a potential second.
And I also have to disclose those. I need to abstain from items 1 and 2 at the southwest corner of Princess Anne Road and South Independence Boulevard. The applicant is a client of mine.
Commissioner Weiner, have you seconded the motion?
Yes, sir, I have. I second.
Hearing a second, a motion to approve the following applications, agenda items 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 17, 18, 22, and 23 by consent has been made by Commissioner Inman and seconded by Commissioner Weiner. Are any planning commissioners abstaining from the vote? Staff notes that Commissioner David Weiner's hand is raised and will be abstaining. Commissioner Weiner, the floor is yours.
Yes, I need to abstain on items 1 and 2, southwest corner of Princess Anne Road and South Independence Boulevard. The applicant is a client of mine.
Staff notes that Commissioner Graham's hand is raised and will be abstaining. Commissioner Graham, the floor is yours. Please provide an explanation for your abstention and pause for 3 seconds before speaking. Thank you.
Mr. Landfair, I will not be abstaining, but I do need to disclose that I am on a board at Town Bank, who is the lender on item number 22. But I will be voting today. I do not have a financial interest.
Staff notes that Commissioner Inman's hand is raised and will be abstaining. Commissioner Inman, the floor is yours.
I will not be abstaining, sorry, but I wanted to clarify that this item 22, as mentioned by Mr. Graham, that mentions Town Bank, or actually Town Bank Mortgage, as a lender. That is causing me to have to make that disclosure, but I am voting.
Thank you. Seeing no more hands raised, the vote is now open, and staff will call each commissioner individually. If you are in favor of the motion, say yes. If you are opposed, say no. Please pause 3 seconds after your name is called before speaking. Mr. Alcaraz.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Costin.
Yes.
Mr. Graham.
Yes.
Mr. Horsley.
Yes.
Mr. Inman. Mr. Inman.
Yes.
Ms. Oliver.
Yes.
Mr. Redmond.
Yes.
Mr. Wall.
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Weiner.
Yes.
Marshall Coleman will announce the vote result.
By a recorded vote of 9-4 and 0 against, with 1 abstention note on items 1 and 2 by Commissioner Weiner, the following items 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 17, 18, 22, and 23 have been approved by consent. Bill?
Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission, the next order of business is the regular agenda. The presentation of the regular agenda is as follows. A, statements by the applicant or applicant's representative, followed by questions by the Planning Commission of the applicant or staff. B, statements by any registered speakers, followed by questions by the Planning Commission of the speaker or staff. C, rebuttal by the applicant or applicant's representative, followed by questions by the Planning Commission, if desired, of the applicant or staff. And D, deliberation of the application by the Planning Commission with a motion followed by a vote. There are 3 items on the regular agenda. I'm sorry, there are 4 items on the regular agenda. Regular agenda, item number 10. William and Marie Burkholder for a conditional use permit request for short-term rental at 4472 Ocean View Avenue, Unit B, in the Bayside District. The applicant's representative is Mr. Burkholder. Mr. Burkholder is the applicant and has signed up to speak. Please provide a summary of your request and remember to identify yourself for the record and pause 3 seconds before speaking so that we can activate your microphone. Mr. Burkholder, you have the floor. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is William Burkholder, and together with my wife Marie, we have applied for a short-term rental permit. This is for waterfront property that we purchased in September of 2019. We'd like to give you a brief history of how we got here and what our intent is. I'm recently retired from a 32-year career with Fairfax County, and my wife will be eligible to retire next year from Loudoun County Public Schools. It has always been our dream to own property at the beach, and so we purchased this particular property with the intent to live in it in a couple of years. We honestly had not planned to buy this so soon, but last summer we were getting a feel for the market with our real estate agent when we stumbled upon this property. Our agent fell in love with the place and stressed that finding waterfront property like this in Chicks Beach is not an everyday occurrence. We told her we were not ready to move yet, and she said, well, you can easily rent it through Airbnb until we're ready to move here. And that the owner at that time was already running it very successfully. So we did some quick research and discovered that we would be able to cover our mortgage with what the current owner was running it for. So we took the our agent's advice, and we bought the property on faith that we could pay for our mortgage with rental income for the next couple of years until we moved here ourselves. We spent then, that was in September of 2019, we spent that fall investing a lot of time and money into the property and turned it into what we think is a premier rental property. Unfortunately, our agent said nothing of the need for a permit. And since we're not from Virginia Beach, we had not read anything about it in the papers or anything like that. So we did not learn of the need for a permit until after the purchase. And we submitted our application then in November. Because we needed to cover our mortgage, we began renting at the end of December. At that time, we knew we met the requirements of the ordinance, and I suppose rather naively, we assumed that the permit process would be fairly quick and painless. We had no idea that it was such a thorny issue and would become as involved and as lengthy of a process as it has. But we did start renting at the end of December, and we have been paying taxes, at least the taxes that are automatically collected by Airbnb. We don't think that those taxes include the local transient occupancy tax, so we have been setting aside money to pay any back taxes we may owe to the city once we have our permit and are able to register with the Commission of Revenue. We do know that there is some opposition to our application. So we do want to make it very clear that this is not something we envision doing long-term. This is not an investment property for us. It is what we plan to live in just a couple of years. And we're not doing this to make money. We just need to pay our mortgage until we're able to move there ourselves. We have read the staff report, and we are in agreement with all the conditions it lays out. And we thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the applicant by the Planning Commission? If so, please raise your virtual hand. Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Inman. Planning Commissioner Inman, your mic is open for comment. Please pause 3 seconds to be unmuted. To be unmuted. Be unmuted. 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 Unmuted.
I'm sorry to say I'm having a technical problem and cannot remove my raised hand at this moment, but I'm working on it with staff.
Thank you. We have 2 speakers signed up to comment. The first speaker is Mark Chambers, followed by John Ince. Note that you have 3 minutes to speak. Please identify yourself for the record and pause 3 seconds before speaking. Thank you. Mr. Chambers?
This was a voice from President.
Okay. Mr. Ince? Mr. Ince? Next speaker is John Ince. Note that you have 3 minutes to speak. Please identify yourself for the record and pause 3 seconds before speaking. Thank you.
This is John Ince. Good afternoon, Planning Commission. I'm a neighbor 3 doors away from the Burkholder townhouse. My wife and I have lived here 20 years. I implore you to not allow another Airbnb into our community of 4 beachfront townhouses. There already is one Airbnb, the unit next door to the Burkholders. The parking and noise are intolerable. Many people rent an Airbnb to party. Having 2 of the 4 beachfront townhouses as short-term rentals would create a miniature Club Med during the summer. The Burkholders have been renting their townhouse as an Airbnb without a permit since last December. Although the townhouse is advertised as 2 bedrooms with 2 dedicated parking spots, the tenants have sometimes brought 3 cars and spilled over into a 5-spot reserved area for residents only. 8 townhouses share this 5-spot reserved area. When both Airbnbs have been rented, we have seen the renters taking over most of the 5-spot reserved area. The 5-spot reserved area is on an easement that residents have used for parking for over 20 years. Another easement right behind the Burkholders townhouse is to be kept clear for access to underhouse parking for the Burkholders and their neighbor. The Burkholders regularly use that easement as a 3rd parking space, which blocks access to their neighbor's 3 assigned spots and encourages renters to use the 5-spot reserved area. When the renters can't find an assigned spot and the 5-spot reserved area is full, renters will unabashedly use one of my assigned spots or just block the whole driveway. This has happened many times. Even if the Burkholders make it clear to their Airbnb renters that parking in the easements or in my parking spots is not allowed, who will police the Airbnb renters when the Burkholders are off-site in their permanent home? In looking at the staff report for this application, I see the recommendation is for approval based on meeting section 241.2 of the zoning ordinance. But that ordinance does not address the density of short-term rentals in the area. Also, the staff reports notes that there is 1 letter of support and 2 of opposition. Please note that the support letter is from another Airbnb, while the opposition is from 2 full-time residents who are already suffering the effects of 2 Airbnbs out of 4 townhouses. My wife and I are in our mid-70s and love our Bayside living. The Burkholders claim that they plan to rent as an Airbnb for only a few years, but that is a significant amount of time for my wife and me. Please don't ruin the lives of the permanent residents by making this an Airbnb community. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Ince by the Planning Commission? If so, please raise your virtual hand. Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Weiner. Planning Commissioner Weiner, your mic is open for comment. Please pause 3 seconds to be unmuted.
Yes, I'd like to ask if the police have ever been called, or if 311 has ever been called, or has this ever been documented that there are issues with this short-term rental?
Mr. Ince, are you aware of any incidents?
No, I am not aware of incidents with this Airbnb of the Burkholders, but the other Airbnb that is operating and apparently has been grandfathered has had a couple of police incidences. One where a 16-year-old girl had a Sweet 16 party, and half of Norfolk teenagers came and took over the neighborhood, and the police had a presence here all night. And that's just the one I know of for sure.
Staff acknowledges. Director Tahan.
Mr. Weiner, on page 2 of the staff report, staff did reach out to see and look in our system to verify if there were any complaints logged for this property in particular that is requesting the conditional use permits. There are no previous zoning violations that we found on the property.
Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Redmond. Planning Commissioner Redmond, your mic is open for comment. Please pause 3 seconds to be unmuted.
Mr. Ince, have you ever had any interaction with Mr. Burkholder?
Spoken to Mr. Burkholder once at length in the driveway, and I have exchanged emails with him several times over the last few months.
Mr. Redmond, if he has any more questions.
Mr. Redmond, do you have any more questions?
Question.
Planning Commissioner Redmond, your mic is open for comment. Please.
Thanks, I'd appreciate it if you'd stop muting me. And you didn't get a lot of satisfaction from that conversation, Mr. Ince. That's what I'm trying to get at.
That they would regulations that would preclude renters from doing anything wrong. And my view is you can write that, but that will not enforce anything, because even now I have had incidences where the Burkholders renters have been parking not in their designated spot. And I've certainly had many occasions with the existing Airbnb next door to the Burkholders where they have parked in my spots many times, and we just have to ask them politely, and they usually move over.
Okay.
Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Redmond. Planning Commissioner Redmond, your mic is open for comment. Please pause 3 seconds to be unmuted. Speakers, Madam Chair, you have the floor, Ms. Oliver, for Planning Commission discussion.
I will open the floor for discussion by the Planning Commission. Please raise your hand if you have a comment or a motion, and staff will open your microphone.
Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Redmond. Your mic is open for comment. Please pause for 3 seconds.
This is in many ways like a lot of these applications that we've seen, and I think in some important ways, unlike it. I am troubled by a number of things in it. First off, let me say, when I read the application and I look at the property, just as the staff says, it's the kind of thing you would anticipate would be appropriate for a short-term rental. I really think this applicant, as a home buyer, should have done a heck of a lot more due diligence before they bought this house. We have been talking about short-term rentals, Mr. Burkholder, for 4 years now. So the idea that a purchase in fall of 2019 would be made and, that wouldn't have occurred to any purchaser who is intending to rent it out strikes me as, very frankly, as far-fetched. Beyond that, I am troubled by what Mr. Ince describes. And based on the clustering of these houses, the way they're laid out, I don't know that it's possible to make these pieces fit together. The way he describes the parking, and I'd be more than happy to hear from Mr. Burkholder again, but the way he describes the parking is of great concern, and I agree with him. You can write whatever you want to write, but if you have folks who simply won't abide by it, and you don't have a way to enforce it, then it is a burden on other folks. I have been largely supportive of these applications that fit an appropriate model. That is to say, they adhere and conform to the ordinance. But within the ordinance, we have the conditional use permit process precisely to understand and debate those kinds of things that might influence that. So I am very skeptical of this application at present. I would like to hear more from Mr. Burkholder about his process and how he came to buy it. I don't know that makes me more sympathetic or not, very frankly, but I really would like to know how he intends to ensure that the problem of these cars bleeding out into other properties can be addressed. I don't know that it can be addressed, is my concern. I just don't know that it's possible to address it. So I'm open to that explanation. I don't know that one exists. If I don't get one, then I'm gonna oppose the application. So that's my 2 cents, folks. Thank you.
Mr. Burkholder, would you like to respond?
Yes, thank you. I'd be happy to. With respect to doing more due diligence prior to the purchase, we couldn't agree more. What happened was we came home from that day of viewing the property, received a phone call from our agent. Another couple had placed an offer on the property, and we needed to respond quickly if we wanted it. We were not terribly comfortable doing it, I'll be honest with you, but we really, really loved that property. And so we counteroffered, and under some, duress to make it happen, we made it happen that weekend. And therefore, we didn't have the luxury of doing more due diligence. Had we had time, we certainly would have done that. And we are regrettably now in this situation. It is certainly not our intent to cause issues with our neighbors, and never was our intent, but nevertheless, it's where we find ourselves today. With respect to the parking issue, so I don't know if it's possible for you all to display the photo that's on the top of page 8 in the staff report. But if you can look at that photograph, it shows the front of our unit. And yes, thank you, that's it. And so we have one parking space underneath the unit and one parking space directly in front of the unit. And then there's a third space, which is to the left-hand side of that paved area, which is technically an easement. Mr. Entz is saying that we should not be permitted to park in the easement, but as you can see, there's really no practical reason why that shouldn't be permitted. It doesn't block access to anything. Nobody else is affected if there's a car in that space. To be clear, that space is not in our parking plan. We are a 2-bedroom unit. We need 2 spaces. We actually think we have 3 spaces. Because again, there's no reason why that third space cannot be used by our renters for parking. And actually allowing people to park in that space alleviates some of the issues that Mr. Entz is referring to. If we don't allow people to park in that space, then they are more likely to park on the driveway where the shared spaces are. But if we have a third space there, that gives us 3 spaces for a 2-bedroom unit that can hold no more than 6 people at a time. We think it will be very rare that we will have more than 2 vehicles, but certainly very rare that we would have more than 3 vehicles. We are very clear in our house rules when it comes to parking. And if you'll allow me, I'd like to just kind of go through that a little bit. Sure. Thank you. So we have a set of house rules in which we state very clearly where our guests are allowed to park and where they are not. And where we allow them to park is under the unit and those 2 spaces directly in front. We are very, very specific about not parking on the driveway or anywhere else. That's not required. Those are technically shared spaces along the driveway, but we're doing this out of respect for our neighbors. We send, prior to approving any guests' request for booking, we send those house rules to them and they must agree to all of the rules, and there are others. They understand the parking situation. A week before they check in, we send them an email where we very explicitly state, you may only park in one of those 3 spaces or in those 3 spaces. You may not park on the driveway. We very clearly state that in that email. When they check in and they open the front door to our house, the first thing they see is a graphical version of the parking plan. It's not the one you see in the report. It shows that, but everything else that's not in front of our unit has red hash marks through it, and we say no parking permitted. We send another email the day after they check in, again reiterating the situation. We reiterate to them that this is a very quiet residential neighborhood. It is not a beach party scene. They know that from our advertising in Airbnb, and we make it very clear in our communication with them throughout the process. We can monitor who's coming and going with our Ring camera, and we can see our parking spaces through that camera, so we know if they are using our parking spaces or not. So we really go to great lengths to minimize the impact, especially when it comes to parking. Mr. Ince has mentioned that some of the guests in the Airbnb next to us have blocked access to his property as they load and unload. Our renters won't do that. They don't need to park on the driveway to load and unload. They simply pull directly in front of our unit. I will also say this, I don't think it's fair to compare the experiences that Mr. Ince has had with the Airbnb next to us to our situation. The one next to us is a 4-bedroom. Ours is a 2-bedroom. We can have 6 people, they can have 12. With the excuse me, we are very, very careful who we rent to. We do not use a booking company or a management company, I should say, because we want to be personally involved in all decisions, because this is our future home. We do not allow instant bookings, which means we personally evaluate every request before approving it. We rent almost exclusively to families and couples. We do not rent to college kids. And we actually have a rule on Airbnb that the primary renter must be at least 25 years old. We have hired 2 caretakers who live there locally. In fact, one lives in the unit next to us when it's not rented, which is much of the time. Either of those caretakers can respond within 30 minutes. If we're retired, I can respond within 30 minutes to a phone call. We also have an adult daughter who lives in Virginia Beach, and she can respond to any issues that come up. Yeah, I guess the bottom line is we have done everything we can think of to minimize the impact on our neighbors. Again, we plan to be neighbors for many years to come. We did ask to speak to Mr. Ince and his wife in the driveway at our request to see if there's anything further we could do to alleviate his concerns. And we simply found that he was not willing to adjust anything. So we feel as though we have done everything we could possibly do, and we will do everything we can do to minimize the impact and make this work as best it can.
Thank you. Commissioner Redmond, do you have any follow-up comments?
Staff, Mr. Kemp, or whoever is best able to answer this, what is this easement they're speaking of? I see nothing in the write-up about that. Whose easement is it? For what purpose is there an easement? And is it permissible to use that for parking? I would guess not. But can you enlighten me a little bit on that?
This is Marshall Coleman, the planner assigned to this project. The easement we were talking about is a private easement from the condo association. The easement allows everyone within that condominium to use the space. And the third space that Mr. Burkholder is talking about is the space, if you see on the parking plan on the screen, parking space number 2, there's an empty space beside parking space number 2. That's the third space that he's referring to, and it's part of the easement with the whole condominium association. And anyone in that condo association can use that parking space.
Right. Can I mention one last thing? Mr. Burkholder, I appreciate that, and Mr. Ince's comments too. Can I just say to staff, and I don't know that I missed this before, but in all of these applications for short-term rentals these days, for whatever reason, we seem inclined to want to print the entire ordinance as conditions. And it makes it very hard to sort out between, each one of these applications, what's different about them from the last. I don't know that we need to list everything in the ordinance about the commissioners of the revenues office. We might just reference, and cite the ordinance that applies. I don't know why we have to do all this. Just makes it harder for me to sort through what's different about this application from the last one we did and the next one we're going to do. So I think we could manage that better that way. Anyway, I appreciate both you gentlemen responding to my questions. I do have some concerns about this. I would like to listen to what my colleagues have to say, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Alcaraz. Your mic is open for comment. Please pause for 3 seconds.
Thank you. This is George Alcaraz. I appreciate Mr. Burkholder's rebuttal. I didn't understand why we didn't hear him at first, but I'm glad he came on. My concern is, Ms. Coleman, you said it's a easement, but it depicts on here on the plans, I'm sorry, I'm looking at it to my left, as an ingress egress, which means it's supposed to be ingress entering and exiting. So really it's not a parking space. Is that correct, Ms. Wilson? If you could explain that. And then also he mentions in there, the owner, the applicant states that he can use the 3 spaces, but he's required to have 2 because he has 2 bedrooms. And he's actually offering that he has a 3rd space. So where are we right there with a fine line of changing what the conditions are? I just want to make sure that an ingress egress is not for parking. If that's correct, I need to know that. And also 2 spaces is what he's maximum allowed to have because he has 2 bedrooms. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by the Deputy City Attorney, Kay Wilson.
Actually, it's a real hand.
It's a real
But, yes, Mr. Alcaraz, I do not have a copy of the easement with me. I have not read it. If it is an ingress egress easement, that normally would indicate that it is for coming and going. However, I don't know what the easement says, so I can't tell you whether it also includes parking. But Mr. Burkholder is required to have 2 spaces, and he has 2 spaces without using the easement.
Staff acknowledges the hand raised by Commissioner Oliver.
Thank you. I just want a clarification on the unit next to them. He mentioned that there were 4 bedrooms, and they can have up to 12 people, which means they can have 4 cars, and I'm assuming he's referring to Unit A, so if they have 4 cars, where are all those cars going in the shared parking and the easement? The other thing that I am not, I'm not crazy about is the fact that he bought this knowing that it was, or from what I understand, what I recall him saying is that he had said that he had, the real estate agent sold it to him and said that it had been a rental unit. Now, whether that was listed with a rental company or not, I don't know. And that's not really pertinent to it, but with the exception of the fact that it had been used as a rental unit. He bought it for a rental unit in hopes that when he retires, he'll come down and live. He started immediately renting it as an Airbnb and didn't bother to take the time to either check with a rental company or with the city here. And so the fact that he had another person, wanting to buy the house is not pertinent to the way he has been using this piece of property, as far as I'm concerned. These Airbnbs are, especially in this area, this is a tight area, and there's not a lot of wiggle room down here. So I have a lot of concern for this added in right here. But that's basically what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Costin. Your mic is open for comment. Please pause for 3 seconds.
Was that for Costin? I guess that's me. I was wondering if Mr. Burkholder would be willing to provide signage to designate parking with the ability to tow, if that would help his neighbor to feel more comfortable with him.
Mr. Burkholder, would you like to respond?
Yes, we'd be happy to provide signage, and in fact, we had suggested to Mr. Ince that signage would help the overall parking situation. He was not in favor of it, but that was our suggestion, and we would be happy to do that. And if I may, since I have the mic, if I could just go over the total overall parking situation for the units where this property exists, it might help explain some things. We are part of a quad of 4 duplex townhouse-style buildings. 4 units face the street, Ocean View Avenue, and the other 4 units face the waterfront. The 2 street side buildings, they each have dedicated driveways opening right onto Ocean View Avenue. Those driveways are 45 feet long and 30 feet wide. So based on the 9x18 city requirements, up to 6 vehicles could park in each street side driveway for a total of 12 parking spaces. In addition, each street side unit has either a garage or a carport under the unit, bringing the total number of parking spaces available to the street side units to 16. That's 16 spaces for 4 units. Access to the waterfront units is along the driveway easement that goes between the street side units. For the 4 waterfront units, there are a total of 9 spaces either under or in front of the units. Plus there are 5 shared spaces along the driveway for a total of 14 spaces serving the 4 waterfront units. When combined with the street side units, that's 30 spaces for 8 units. That should be plenty of parking. Our neighbor's primary concern is having inadequate shared parking along the driveway. Part of the reason he's encountered inadequate shared parking is that the street side units are using the shared driveway for parking. When you read the declaration of easement, which we have, it states that the driveway shall, quote, shall be for the benefit of and be restricted solely to the owners of the waterfront lots. That means the street side units really should not be using the driveway for parking. The reason I bring all that up is if the shared parking is as much of a concern as Mr. Ince contends, then he does have a means of recourse. He simply needs to ask the street side units to stop parking on the driveway, and that will free up spaces. Thank you.
Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Weiner. Your mic is open for comment. Please pause for 3 seconds.
Yes, thank you. I think we need to step back and think about it. I asked the question if anybody has ever been called to this application, to this house in the past, and I knew it wasn't. I read it in the staff report, but I wanted to hear that from Mr. Inc. Another thing we have to think about, if Mr. Inc. wasn't here to comment, this would be on the consent agenda right now, because he meets all of the criteria that we all put together. It's a 2-bedroom. It has 2 parking places. I don't see it's tight. I think we have a lot to learn about short-term rentals yet. I think City Council is going to come up with some new requirements that we're going to have to look at. And in saying that, I'm going to be supporting this. That's all I'd say.
Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Redmond. Your mic is open for comment. Please pause for 3 seconds.
No, thank you.
Is there a motion? Okay. Madam Chair, staff opens the mic for you to call for a second.
Do I have a second? What was the first motion?
I'm sorry, Mr. Weiner made the motion for approval.
Mr. Wall.
Mr. Wall, seconds. So staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Wall as a potential second. Commissioner Wall, your mic is now open.
I second the application.
A motion to approve the application has been made by Commissioner Weiner and seconded by Commissioner Wall. Are any planning commissioners abstaining from the vote? If so, please raise your virtual hand.
This was up before you asked for it, I'm sorry.
The vote is now open, and staff will call each commissioner individually. If you are in favor of the motion, say yes. If you are opposed, say no. Please pause 3 seconds after your name is called before speaking. Mr. Alcaraz.
I want to recognize Mr. Redmond.
That's what the little hand is for, eh? So, did Mr. Weiner make a motion? I didn't hear it.
Commissioner Weiner made a motion for approval.
Tell him again.
Commissioner Weiner made a recommendation, made a motion for approval.
Hello?
Commissioner Weiner made a motion for approval with a second from Commissioner Wall.
Through that.
Vote now open. Mr. Redmond, staff acknowledges your virtual hand. Your mic is open for comment. Please pause for 3 seconds.
Yeah, I'm still not comfortable with this. I appreciate Mr. Burkholder's explanation. And I acknowledge that a lot of the complaints that Mr. Ince has are really deriving from another unit. Larger unit that probably is not particularly well managed, I'm guessing. And that's an enforcement issue. So I don't know if grandfathered, that we have the same enforcement mechanisms that we would on a new application. Nonetheless, that's an enforcement issue. Now, we tend not to enforce much of anything around here sometimes. And that may be one of the things Mr. Ince has a problem with. My concern is the way these units are clustered. Given the problems that are there by one unit, it may be that 1 out of 4 is probably enough short-term rentals in this one place. That might make things difficult for the applicant. And I acknowledge that. I'm sorry about that. But as I said, caveat emptor. There was not enough due diligence done with regard to this process, this property. And it was the big pink elephant in the room in a lot of these neighborhoods for years. So I think that was not something to have missed. I cannot get comfortable with this application. I don't think it's there yet. So I'm going to oppose the application.
Thank you. Are there any other planning commissioner comments? Hearing none, the vote is now open, and staff will call each commissioner individually. If you are in favor of the motion, say yes. If you are opposed, say no. Please pause 3 seconds after your name is called before speaking. Mr. Alcaraz.
Yes, thank you.
Austin. Mr. Costin.
Yes.
Mr. Graham.
Yes.
Mr. Horsley.
Yes.
Mr. Inman.
No.
Ms. Oliver.
No.
Mr. Redmond.
No.
Mr. Wall.
Yes.
Mr. Weiner.
Yes.
Marshall Coleman will announce the vote result.
By a recorded vote of 6 for and 3 against, this application, agenda item 10, is hereby recommended for approval by the Planning Commission. Bill?
Thank you. Agenda item number 19, the Good Manor Group LLC for conditional use permit request for short-term rental at 1712 Ruger Street in the Kempsville District. The applicant is Denise Phipps. Ms. Phipps has signed up to speak. Please provide a summary of your request and remember to identify yourself for the record and pause 3 seconds before speaking so that we can activate your microphone. Ms. Phipps, you have the floor. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Denise Phipps. I don't know why I haven't, are you guys hearing an echo? Okay, I'll keep going. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things because I listened to the meeting this morning. I did have a permit for the driveway, and it was, the contractor got a permit, everything was good, but apparently when they came back to do the inspection, the final, it didn't pass because there was an issue just at the end of the driveway. It didn't have anything to do with the width of how wide it was. It's just the way the driveway. I'm in the process with my contractor getting him to fix that. I also wanted to say from the pictures, it's a little bit hard to see the whole angle of how it looks. But I do have landscaping that's on the side and up towards the front of the house. It looks much nicer than what these pictures are showing. The other thing was one of the reasons I think that it's been beneficial to have the space, even while we were working and doing things there, nobody in the neighborhood had a problem because there's an issue. Some people have driveways this size that are not doing all the extra things that I've done to make it look nice. And there's a parking issue. So people will park on their lawns and everything else, which doesn't look good either. So I really tried to make the house look nice, and everybody around me seems to really like it. So I just wanted to clear that up, that I did have the permit. I wasn't aware that it didn't get the final done because I didn't hear anything until I spoke to Kevin about getting my additional things in order that I needed for the Airbnb. That's when I became aware. So I contacted the contractor, and the only reason there's been any delay is just simply because of virus. But I spoke with him again today, and he is getting it resolved.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the applicant by the Planning Commission? If so, please raise your virtual hand. Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Alcaraz. Planning Commissioner Alcaraz, your mic is open for comment. Please pause 3 seconds to be unmuted.
Thank you. This is George Alcaraz. In relation to the permit that's not approved, Kevin, do you have anything on that? Or I have a feeling I know what it is, but do you have any record of what the concern is?
Kevin Kemp?
Yes, the issue was with where it hits the street. The driveway came straight down to the street where you're limited to a 20-foot width, so it has to go from the existing apron and taper back. So the issue was all with how the driveway tapered back to meet the property line. So it was the pavement in the right-of-way that was the issue. The driveway needs to taper.
Am I back on? So that means they've got to tear it out and rip out the curb that's there on the picture and taper it out and then get approved, correct?
Kevin Kemp?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. Are there any more questions of the applicant at this time? I'm sorry.
No,
Nope. Okay.
I don't have any questions for him.
Are there any more questions of the applicant at this time by the Planning Commission? If not, we would like Rick Lohman, City Traffic Engineer, to provide some additional comment regarding this application. Rick?
Good afternoon.
Rick Lohman, Public Works Traffic Engineering. Kevin just stated kind of what I was going to mention, which was that at the right-of-way line, which is 10 foot back from the edge of pavement, the driveway could be no wider than 20 feet. So it looks like from the aerial view that I have on Google Earth, it's about 26 foot wide. So there's a 6 foot by 10 foot area that would have to be removed. So I just wanted to point that out because some of the conversations that were being held earlier were that you could pave your entire, the front yard, but at the right-of-way line, it is limited to 20 feet. So generally, and I've measured it in this neighborhood, the right-of-way line is 10 feet from the edge of pavement.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Rick by the Planning Commission? If so, please raise your virtual hand. Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Alcaraz. Planning Commissioner Alcaraz, your mic is open for comment. Please pause 3 seconds to be unmuted.
Okay, this is George Alcaraz again. So with what the traffic engineer just said, what does that do to the parking if they have to, the first 10 feet has to be ripped out and no bigger than 20 foot, apron. But on the drawing, it has some of the parking shown off the property. So is that going to affect it anymore? Thank you.
Kevin, can you please respond?
Yes, absolutely. It should not impact the parking. The portion of the parking that is into the public right-of-way is where the existing apron is. There should still be space in the paved area, the new paved area on the property to accommodate the parking. As you can see from the diagram, they show the parking kind of coming in at an angle, which would allow for 2 cars to fit in that, limited space.
Thank you. Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Graham. Planning Commissioner Graham, your mic is open for comment. Please pause 3 seconds to be unmuted.
So Rick, right now, I guess maybe this question really isn't for Rick, but right now, the applicant is not in compliance because the driveway is basically a section of it needs to be ripped out. Is that correct?
Please respond.
Sorry, was that question for Rick or myself or Kevin?
Well, Kevin, you could answer it. I mean, right now, the
okay.
applicant is not in compliance. Is that correct?
That is correct. A building permit was obtained from our Permits and Inspections Division that showed the proper driveway with the right taper and the right apron length being installed. So right now, that driveway is in violation of that permit and needs to be corrected. So on top of, the consideration today with the short-term rental, there is also a, before that permit is ever finalized out, it needs to be in compliance with the building permit that was pulled.
I mean, they have 4 spaces, but they really don't have 4 spaces right now because they built something that's not in compliance. I don't know how we'd even be able to vote to approve something like
this. Staff acknowledges the hand raised by Commissioner Oliver.
I am inclined to ask to possibly have this deferred until this applicant is in compliance with the permit and the driveway, and then let's get the housekeeping cleaned up on her part, and then we'll see how much parking we have.
Would you like the applicant to respond?
Yes, please.
Okay. Ms. Phipps, would you like to respond, please?
Once I was made aware of this, I did contact Kevin and say maybe I needed to delay until I got this remedy. And he told me that it would be okay, that I would have an additional 30 days to make sure this was corrected. And like I said, I have spoken to the contractor, and I've spoken to a second contractor, so that if this does not get fixed, like right away, I'll hire, even though it's not my responsibility, because he didn't do it the way he should have. I'm not a contractor. I hired in good faith, you know, that everything was in order. So I am ready to get it fixed and get it fixed very rapidly.
Thank you. Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Inman. Planning Commissioner Inman, your mic is open for comment. Please pause 3 seconds to be unmuted.
I just want to support Ms. Oliver's suggestion of a deferral. If we have any problems with any of these applications, particularly about parking, it just need to be straightened out and come back.
Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Wall. Planning Commissioner Wall, your mic is open for comment. Please pause 3 seconds to be unmuted.
Thank you. This is Jack Wall, and I'd support that as well. I think that it would be, I think it would enhance the aesthetics, as well as, ensure that this is, in compliance with what they're supposed to be doing. Says, my support would be for a deferral.
Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Planning Commissioner Graham. Planning Commissioner Graham, your mic is open for comment. Please pause 3 seconds to be unmuted.
We've had really, I guess, 3 motions for a deferral. I'd like to motion for deferral.
Thank you. Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Redmond. Planning Commissioner Redmond, your mic is open for comment. Please pause 3 seconds to be unmuted.
I second the motion.
There we go.
All right. Hearing a second, a motion to defer the application has been made by Commissioner Oliver and seconded by Commissioner Redmond.
Sorry, let's correct that for the record. That was by Commissioner Wall and seconded by Commissioner Redmond.
Are any planning
I'm sorry,
commissioners?
Mr. Graham,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. It was Mr. Graham and seconded by Mr. Redmond. I apologize.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'll repeat the motion. A motion to defer the application has been made by Commissioner Graham and seconded by Commissioner Redmond. Are any planning commissioners abstaining from the vote? Please raise your virtual hand. The vote is now open, and staff will call each commissioner individually. If you are in favor of the motion, say yes. If you are opposed, say no. Please pause 3 seconds after your name is called before speaking. Mr. Alcaraz.
Yes.
Mr. Costa.
Yes.
Mr. Graham.
Yes.
Mr. Horsley.
Yes.
Mr. Inman.
Yes.
Ms. Oliver.
Yes.
It's gotta be June 24th.
Mr. Redmond.
Yes.
Mr. Wall.
Yes.
Mr. Weiner.
Yes.
Marshall Coleman will announce the vote result.
By a recorded vote of 9-4 and 0 against, agenda item 19 is hereby deferred by the Planning Commission, indefinitely deferred by the Planning Commission.
Agenda items 20 and 21.
Bill, just for a point of clarification for the public, the item is deferred indefinitely until the applicant can can get an inspection and get their permit finalized. Once then, we can then advertise it for the proper public hearing after it's been corrected.
Thank you, Mr. Tahan. Agenda items 20 and 21. Erica Atkins and Melvin Atkins for conditional use permit requests for short-term rentals at 598 Pinewood Drive, units 203 and 208 in the Beach District. The applicants are Erica and Melvin Atkins. Both Mr. and Mrs. Atkins have signed up to speak. Mr. and Mrs. Atkins, please provide a summary of your request and remember to identify yourself for the record and pause 3 seconds before speaking so that we can activate your microphone. Mr. and Mrs. Atkins, you have the floor. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, commissioners. My wife and I, we're here, and she's with me now. We have purchased 2 units in the Shadow Lawn Villas 2 complex, and we purchased these to short-term rental them during the summertime months, and winter rental them during the winter months. I want to say kind of as an investment. In the winter months, I do a lot of surfing. We do a lot of stuff at the beach. We do the runs. We do some events down there. So we would take advantage of some of the wintertime stuff, but primarily we plan to rent it, abide by all the rules, laws, all your ordinances, all that good stuff. I just had to go through the process of the conditional use permit. These places have been short-term rentals for a very long time. I think it used to be a motel originally, 4 blocks from the beach. It's a great area. We've upgraded, put over $10,000 in each unit. There's very small units, 700 square feet. We've done a lot of work. We've got Ring doorbells installed. It's improved, I would say it could improve security. Anyway, I think the short-term rentals are the way to go. I think they bring more value to the complex. I think they more value to the area. I think they're better for the owners. They, you get the people in for a short amount of time. You take care of the place. You're in there all the time. My wife actually manages them. We do everything in house. My wife does the cleaning, managing, inspections. We meticulously pick our people. Most of them are 5-star. They all have to be government ID verified. All kinds of credentials. They have to stay there. It's really cool. We enjoy it. It's a little bit of money to be made, setting us up for later in life, and it's kind of where we're at there. And a couple bumps here and there with our association. They don't use the same regulations that you guys do. They do a 7-day minimum. So we actually don't. We rent within a 7-day block. We can only do 1 guest per week there. So we're a little bit of a disadvantage there, but we still enjoy it, still like it. It still works good for us, and that's where we're at with that.
Thank you. Would Mrs. Atkins like to say anything?
Would you like to say?
Oh, yeah. Mute yours, please. Hi. This isn't like a new thing for us. We do have a short-term rental in another community in the Outer Banks that's very similar to this one. We've successfully ran that for the last 2 years. I actually go down, we've just turned that over to another cleaning lady. So she actually does the cleaning. So I'm not as hands-on with that one, but I actually managed that one from here. We've had 0 complaints from the neighbors. It's a little bigger community than what we have here at Shadow Lawn. But the screening that we do, we don't rent to anybody under the age of 25. We're super picky about how many people stay. We do install the Ring doorbells to be able to make sure that we can monitor that situation, make sure that, we know how many people are going in and out of our unit. It also happens that our unit on the end, 208, actually goes directly to, it faces the exit. So the Ring doorbell on that actually does help out to see every car that exits the parking. So it definitely is a form of um, security there, being able to see every car that comes and goes, kind of thing.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the applicant by the Planning Commission? If so, please raise your virtual hand. Are there any questions of the applicant by the Planning Commission? If so, please raise your virtual hand. Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Graham. Planning Commissioner Graham, your mic is open for comment. Please pause 3 seconds to be unmuted.
This is a question for the applicant. You currently manage the property. Where do you reside? I don't need the exact address, but are you close by? Do you live in?
We actually live 5 miles from the community, so we're in Virginia Beach as well. We're in Great Neck.
Okay. And how much of an investment did you make into the property? You said you did some work to it.
Yes, sir. We have put about 10,000, a little bit over, into each property, just upgrades and just kind of touch-ups that needed to be done, paint, flooring, redoing cabinets, bathrooms, vanities, window treatments, those kind of things, lighting.
Okay. This is really a question for William. It says here that they meet the parking requirement. Is there any issue with that?
Will, would you like to respond, please?
This was a question for William Miller.
Here we go. Looks like they just unmuted me. So each, I swear I wasn't ignoring you. So each unit has 1 bedroom and there's 1 parking space for each unit. Like I said earlier, there are 5 letters of opposition. I've read through all of them. I don't recall seeing anything about parking concerns that were brought up. It doesn't mean it wasn't there. I just don't recall it at this time. The other concerns that I talked about earlier were the ones that I made notes of. So answer to your question, I don't know of any currently.
Okay.
Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Redmond. Planning Commissioner Redmond, your mic is open for comment. Please pause 3 seconds to be unmuted.
No hand, brother, no hand.
Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Alcaraz. Planning Commissioner Alcaraz, your mic is open for comment. Please pause 3 seconds to be unmuted.
Thank you. This is George Alcaraz. I should have gotten with Ms. Wilson before, but I own the property across the street, and I just wanted to disclose that. And I don't know these owners. I don't know anything about the property across the street, so I just want to make sure that it's aware that I'm an adjacent property owner. I will be voting.
Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Graham. Planning Commissioner Graham, your mic is open for comment. Please pause 3 seconds to be unmuted.
Sorry, I meant to unclick my hand. I apologize.
All hands are down. Do you have any opposition?
Are there any more questions of the applicant at this time by the Commission? Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Wall. Planning Commissioner Wall, your mic is open for comment. Please pause 3 seconds to be unmuted.
Thank you. This is Jack Wall. I'm just, I'm curious, how long have you been renting these properties? And maybe you mentioned that, and I may have missed it, but if you could state that again. Thank you.
The 208 unit since January, I believe. The 203 is just now getting completed. We just got flooring in as of last Sunday, so we have not even started that rental yet.
We have one, I'm sorry. Staff acknowledges the hand raised by Commissioner Oliver.
Hi, yes. I just want to make sure, I'm not sure if I heard you, because I know you mentioned something about property in Shadow Lawn, somewhere else in Shadow Lawn. Do you all have another Airbnb?
Actually, we have two, or the two properties that are located within Shadow Lawn Villas too, but the other property that we have that is an Airbnb is in the Outer Banks. It's in a similar community, but it is not in Virginia Beach.
Okay, thank you.
We have one speaker signed up to comment, Dennis Weber. Mr. Weber, note that you have 3 minutes to speak. Please identify yourself for the record and pause 3 seconds before speaking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Dennis Weber. Just a light comment on it, and mine will all be security-based. Within the parking lot, there are absolutely no security lights whatsoever, so it is a dark environment. Concerns, we do have some issues on break-ins. As early as just last night, I can forward video to you that there were people walking actually through the parking lot there, as well as went through our cars in our driveway. Fortunately, I did leave my car unlocked, went through it, through the glove box. Fortunately, they do not play golf, so my golf clubs were still in the trunk. If those are really my only concerns are security driven, if there was some more lighting in the parking lot, maybe some more security cameras, I'm not objecting to anything. It's just all safety. Bringing a lot of people into here that don't live might be concerning. Thank you very, very much and appreciate your time.
There are no more speakers, Madam Chair. You have the floor, Ms. Oliver, for Planning Commission discussion.
Great, thank you. I'd like to close this hearing to open it up to the discussions for the Planning Commission or entertain a motion. So if you have a comment or motion, if you'll raise your virtual hand so staff can recognize that, please.
Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Graham. Your mic is open for comment. Please pause for 3 seconds.
I'd like to motion that we approve the application for both number 20 and number 21.
Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Weiner. Your mic is open for comment. Please pause for 3 seconds.
I would second that motion.
Are any planning commissioners abstaining from the vote? Please raise your virtual hand. The vote is now open, and staff will call each commissioner individually. If you are in favor of the motion, say yes. If you are opposed, say no. Please pause 3 seconds after your name is called before speaking. Mr. Alcaraz.
Yes.
Mr. Costin.
Yes.
Mr. Graham.
Yes.
Mr. Horsley.
Yes.
Mr. Inman.
Yes.
Ms. Oliver.
Yes.
Mr. Redmond.
Yes.
Mr. Wall.
Yes.
Mr. Weiner.
Yes.
Marshall Coleman will announce the vote result.
By a recorded vote of 9-4 and 0 against, agenda items 20 and 21 are hereby recommended for approval by the Planning Commission.
Thank you. Agenda item 24, Ocean Rental Properties LLC for conditional use permit request for short-term rental at 2216 Baltic Avenue, Unit B in the Beach District. The applicant's representative is Michael Levy. Mr. Levy has signed up to speak. Please provide a summary of your request and remember to identify yourself for the record and pause 3 seconds before speaking so that we can activate your microphone. Mr. Levy, you have the floor. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon, distinguished commissioners. My name is Michael Levy with the law firm of Sykes Burdon, located at 4429 Bonnie Road in Virginia Beach. And I'm pleased today to be able to represent the applicant, Ocean Rental Properties LLC, in this application for a conditional use permit for a short-term rental. And I'll note for the record as well that I am substituting here for Mr. Burdon, who unfortunately could not join us today due to an unfortunate personal matter that has taken him out of the office. I think I'd like to use my time to just address what I understand may have been an issue that arose during your informal hearing, where I think a concern was raised about access to the property in terms of access from Baltic Avenue and parking at the property. And I wanted to make it clear that there's no additional curb cut that will be necessary from Baltic Avenue. There's an existing curb cut there today. And this property is, this residence is one unit of a 2-unit condominium on this lot. So it's subject to a condominium declaration that provides for a shared access easement from Baltic Avenue. And in fact, in the staff report, you can see the common area is depicted on page 6 of the staff report. It's on the slide that's up in front of me, at least on my screen right now, as that cross-hatched area that directly leads out to Baltic Avenue. And the condo documents provide that area shall not be blocked by occupants of either unit, except for any sort of temporary unloading or loading of vehicles. But so basically, I wanted to make the point that there should be no need to contact the owner of Unit A to get them to ask them to move a vehicle in order to be able to get in and out of the parking that's provided and shown as spaces 1, 2, and 3 on that plan in front of you. All of that parking is on Unit B. It's on our client's property. So, and again, they'll have free access in and out of that area. And as you can see as well, the 4th space that's required is going to be accessed off of 22.5 Street, 22nd.5 Street. So anyway, that's what I wanted to address right now. And of course, I'm here to answer any questions and address any other concerns that may be raised. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions of the applicant by the Planning Commission? If so, please raise your virtual hand. Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Alcaraz. Planning Commissioner Alcaraz, your mic is open for comment. Please pause 3 seconds to be unmuted.
Thank you. This is George Alcaraz. I just want to thank Mr. Levy for bringing that up as far as it's a shared entrance. That's all I needed cleared up. Thank you.
Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Weiner. Planning Commissioner Weiner, your mic is open for comment. Please pause 3 seconds to be unmuted.
I'm sorry, I'll take it down. It was not supposed to be up.
Staff acknowledges the hand raised by Commissioner Oliver.
I have a question, and well, I guess, Bill, this is your application. Has the deck been modified has that been done?
No, not yet. But in speaking to the applicant, they have indicated a willingness to do that, but it has not been done as of the last time I was on the property.
So am I correct to understand that in order to get the parking spaces that they need, they have to adjust where the deck comes out? Is that correct?
Correct.
So they don't have the parking right now. Is that correct?
They have parking available. It's in order to accommodate 2 spaces behind the deck to make it work much better, you really need to truncate the deck. Otherwise, there would be a lot of jockeying back and forth with the spaces, and we feel that's not really a good situation. So we feel in order for it to function better, as it should, we've asked for truncation of the deck, which I don't believe has taken place yet. But I believe it's a condition of approval for the application.
Okay. So in order for this application to be approved, that has to be taken care of.
That's correct.
And as far as we know, it has not.
That's correct.
Yes. Bob?
Yes. Madam Chair, it's typical for applications that if they do not need to get or if they do not obtain the conditional use permit, they will not be required to have that extra space in the way that staff has recommended them to access it. So they already have all their required parking for their existing residential unit.
Okay, that's what I wasn't sure of.
This is different than the previous item in the Brigadoon area where there was an existing permit that was in violation that needed to be corrected before the commission felt comfortable with it moving forward. This item here would be a condition of approval. They would have to alter the deck in order to properly access that additional parking space. They're not in violation. This is just one that if they do get approval, they will have to do that to operate.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Graham. Planning Commissioner Graham, your mic is open for comment. Please pause 3 seconds to be unmuted.
I was removing my hand. That cleared it up for me, is that it is actually compliant now. So
Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Inman. Planning Commissioner Inman, your mic is open for comment. Please pause 3 seconds to be unmuted.
I move for approval of this application.
We actually have 2 speakers, Mr. Inman, who would like to speak first. The first speaker is Josh Moto, to be followed by Patrick McCulloch. Mr. Moto? Speaking. Thank you.
Signed up on behalf of the applicant if we needed to give any further comment, and no further comment is necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCulloch, you have 3 minutes to speak. Please identify yourself for the record and pause 3 seconds before speaking. Thank you. You have 3 minutes to speak. Please identify yourself for the record and pause 3 seconds before speaking. Thank you. Mr. McCulloch, you have 3 minutes to speak. Please identify yourself for the record and pause 3 seconds before speaking. Thank you. Okay, thank you. All right. There are no more speakers, Madam Chair. You have the floor, Ms. Oliver, for Planning Commission discussion.
Okay, thank you. I will open the floor for discussion by the Planning Commission or entertain a motion by one of the commissioners. So if you will please raise your virtual hand if you have a comment or a motion for city staff. Thank you.
the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Alcaraz. Your mic is open for comment. Please pause for 3 seconds.
Mr. Landfair, I didn't hear that last speaker. Was that in opposition? I didn't hear anything that was said. And I'd like to respond after that.
Mr. Alcaraz, there was a speaker signed up, Mr. McCulloch. He was not available to speak at that moment, and we believe he was in opposition to the application.
I have no problem making a motion. I just want to emphasize condition number 3, what Ms. Oliver brought up. So I make a motion to approve.
Okay. Staff acknowledges the virtual hand raised by Commissioner Inman. Your mic is open for comment. Please pause for 3 seconds.
I second the motion to approve.
Hearing a second, a motion to approve the application has been made by Commissioner Alcaraz and seconded by Commissioner Inman. Are any planning commissioners abstaining from the vote? If so, please raise your virtual hand. The vote is now open, and staff will call each commissioner individually. If you are in favor of the motion, say yes. If you are opposed, say no. Please pause 3 seconds after your name is called before speaking. Mr. Alcaraz?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Costin?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Horsley?
Come on, guys.
His mic is open.
Mr. Inman?
Yes.
Ms. Oliver?
Yes.
Mr. Redmond?
Yes.
Mr. Wall?
Yes.
Mr. Weiner?
Yes.
Marshall Coleman will announce the vote result.
By a recorded vote of 8-4 and 0 against, agenda item 24 is hereby recommended for approval by the Planning Commission.
Madam Chair, that was the last item on the agenda. The mic is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. I do believe our planning director, Mr. Hahn, has some words to speak before we close the meeting.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you very much. Commissioners, as you may be aware of the letter that, or summarizing the February retreat by City Council regarding short-term rentals that staff forwarded to you, I guess it was in March at this point. Then the months have been bleeding together a little bit. We did a presentation for City Council last night regarding those recommendations, and staff will be forwarding you the presentation. More than likely, either the June 2nd or June 9th City Council hearing. The City Council will probably, maybe, depending on their review of what they would like to have sent to the commission, will more than likely adopt a resolution for the Planning Commission to review changes to the short-term rental ordinance based on their guidance. Staff will brief you and bring you up to speed as we move forward. But if that does stay on that timeline, there is a hope to be on the August public hearing agenda with the short-term rental recommendations. Other than that, we do want to, I would take some liberties as the director to offer a moment of silence for this week. As we get closer to the memorial of the unfortunate events of last year, we continue to try to work hard. It does end up slamming down on us, unbeknownst to us, to be honest with you, when we are reminded and as we think about those that we have lost and our colleagues that are still suffering at this moment. So I take some privilege to offer up a moment of silence for the commission. Thank you. With that, that's all for my comments. We're thankful for everyone that has participated in this virtual hearing. I do apologize for the delays during the informal session due to technical difficulties. We will try to make this run smoother for the June 10th hearing. Madam Chair, thank you, and I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Dahan. And I just want to thank all staff and the planning director and all planning staff. Everybody did a great job today. It certainly was a difficult one, trying to get through this virtual meeting. It's a first for us, and there was a lot of bugs to work out, and I just commend you all. You did a great job, and even though we got a late start, those things happen, and it's new. We're navigating new ground here, and we're all getting used to it. And so thank you all so much for all your time and effort. The script, I mean, the amount of hours that staff has put into this to prepare us for this meeting today is just, I can't even imagine how many hours y'all have put in, and I just really appreciate it very much. And so those of you who are in front of me, thank you, and all of those who are virtually listening to us, thank you so much. And I want to thank everyone for attending and participating in the virtual public hearing. The recording of this meeting is going to be posted on the Planning Commission's webpage within 10 days. That website is vbgov.com/pc. The applications not withdrawn or deferred will be scheduled for a future City Council meeting. Staff will let the applicants know when that will be, and those dates will be posted on the Planning Commission's webpage. And until 2 weeks, we will see you again, and until then, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.